The goal of globalism is the total control over the world economy. We have to understand that globalism is first and foremost an economic consideration. It is very difficult for international bankers, financiers, merchants, etc., to make the kind of money that they want to make, even though they're making billions and billions now. They're never satisfied. Who was it? Someone asked Old Man Rockefeller, how much fun does it take to make you happy? And he said, a little more. So no matter how much they have, it's never enough. And nationhood is an impediment to a global economy. It is a series of red tape that they've got to jump through. There's always taxes involved, and there's imposts and duties and tariffs, and there's all kinds of mechanisms in place at the various national levels to make it more difficult for the international merchants to make profits. So their ultimate goal is to eliminate national borders, to create a global, we hear about the global economy all the time. Well, that's more than just a cliche with them. They truly want to eliminate borders so that they can have a true global economy of which they control, which would make them infinitely more money than they are making now. So that is the goal. So it's economic first and foremost. But obviously, in order to have a global economy, you have to have a global army to maintain it, to protect it, to enforce it. So you cannot have any kind of a global economy without a global army. Obviously, when you start putting that much power in the hands of a selected number of soldiers and military personnel, obviously it multiplies the propensity for abuse. I mean, if you think that individual nations can be abusive when it comes to military and to soldiering and things of that nature, imagine if you were able to collect all of that under one authority, under one command. The propensity for devastation would be horrific. So their goal is an economic world order. Their goal is riches and power. And if that means that they've got to eliminate nationhood and national boundaries, then they're for it. As to the deliberate death and destruction, I think it's more in terms of whatever they have to do to maintain their global control over the world's wealth. Obviously, independent nations, independent-minded people are not harmonious with those goals. And so if you live for the purpose of doing nothing but making money and increasing power, if that is what wakes you up in the morning, if you don't have a God consciousness in your heart, a moral code, a moral compass, whatever you want to say, or maybe you have replaced that compass with the state and the power of the state and the power of riches, then you're governed by that code. And if people like the patriots of 1776 and the independent-minded people of Europe, and they're scattered around various countries where people are not interested in making the world a better, richer place for the globalists. That's not what motivates them. They look for their own country. They look for their own community. They're not interested in the God of money and the God of wealth and the God of power that these people that we're talking about are. There's a conflict. So if you can condense power into the hands of that few number of people, expanding it over an entire planet, I mean, let your imagination run wild with the possibility for death, destruction, disaster. I mean, it's unlimited, unparalleled in human history. So that's why I believe it's a biblical principle as a pastor. I believe it's a biblical principle that God created nations, and God expects nations to maintain their borders. God expects nations to maintain their sovereignty, that there's going to be no national government, there's going to be no global government until King Jesus comes to rule and reign. Until then, it's very important that nations maintain their sovereignty, their independence. And that's what the United States did in 1775 and 6 when we declared our independence from that burgeoning global conspiracy, if you want to call it that, the crown and the banking system that was partnered with it, which had expanded all over the world, including the Americas, and was, of course, building that globalist society. And the Founding Fathers broke free from that, thank God. And that's I think, a challenge that every generation of freedom-loving people have to always be alert to. The propensity of government to increase power into itself, the propensity of wealthy internationalists to increase power unto themselves is always with us, and we must always be diligent to resist.